I'm muted. Hi, everyone. I was just asking if everyone can turn on their camera for just a moment, and then you can turn them back off if you want, and just make sure to mute your microphones. That would be great. Okay. Okay, so nobody wants to come on camera for even a moment. That's okay. So today we're going to speak about intuition and psychic abilities and why it's important to, that's okay, and why it's important to develop the intuition, what it's all about, how do we decipher our intuition from our emotions, from our thoughts, from our desires, and how we can develop it. So I'll begin by just talking a little bit about some of the different ways that we can feel our intuition. Well, when we get towards the end or mid, I'm going to ask for questions and you guys can ask your particular questions. However, the way I always usually like to start is if you can pop into the comments, what brought you here? So what piques or sparks your interest about this topic? And you can just write 1 or 2 words so I can just see them quickly. So just what piques or sparks your interest about this particular topic, just so I can get a feel for what has brought you here. It's a calling I feel, okay? You feel the calling towards this particular area of development. Enhancing my Reiki practice, absolutely. We'll talk a little bit about that. Since you mentioned it, we'll talk about that. Okay, curiosity. I know I'm doing something I would like to develop. Okay, great. Okay. Yeah, and if anyone else wants to pop that in, okay. So yes, I'm going to begin by saying that every single one of us is intuitive and every single one of us does have psychic abilities, okay? And I'll go through the different ones in a moment. So all of us do have intuition. I'm sure if I ask all of you at some point in your life, you had the experience of, I should have, I knew that was going to happen, or I knew that, but I didn't say anything, or I knew that, but I chose differently. I'm sure that all of us can have, has those kind of experiences. So I'm just also letting people in as they come in. So that said, how do we understand when it's our intuition? Because this is one of the most popular questions I always get asked is how do we really understand or decipher when it's our intuition, when it's our emotional sort of nature or our reactions, and when it's sort of our mind stuff, our thoughts and our mind processes. So yes, it could get all mixed up, absolutely can get all mixed up. There's many different ways on how we can decipher the differences. So I'll begin by our mind has the energy or the sense or the essence of looping and ruminating. So if I think a thought, or I think of something about in the past, or I start to create a story about something that occurred in the past, what will start to tend to happen is I'm going to loop in it. And what can happen from that, I can make the story bigger and bigger and bigger. So for example, let's say my friend didn't call me back. Why didn't my friend call me back? Am I not important enough? Is she really my friend? Does she really care about me? If she cared about me, she'd call me back or she'd be there for me. And so the mind starts to go into story making. And it can go jump from one story to another story to another story. And sooner than later, you have 10 stories attached to one event. And that event can be very small or it can be very large. That's the nature of the mind. Similarly, the nature of our emotions, when we start to think those thoughts, we will start to develop certain feelings and emotions. When we get a feeling or emotion, likely it's not the intuition, because intuition is more neutral, and I'll get there in a moment. So for example, I'll use the same example. My friend didn't call me back, or she's not there for me. Does she really care about me? Maybe she really doesn't care about me. And if she doesn't really care about me, then I start to get this sensation in my body. The minute I feel or see or say she does not care about me, I start to get a sensation in my body that I'm starting to feel sad about it. And then all of a sudden I can go into my sadness. I can really deeply feel sad that my friend either didn't call me back, she wasn't there for me, she sort of went MIA, don't know where she is, and now I feel sort of unloved or uncared for. These are loops we can get into. And the truth may be that either she wasn't aware, she was busy with her own stuff, something occurred that had nothing at all to do with any of this. But our mind and our emotions can get us into these loops of energy that we can get stuck in, that we can spend a lot of time in. And it can take us further and further and further. Whereas the energy and essence of intuition is more neutral. So it doesn't have a feeling necessarily. It doesn't have, I take that back. It doesn't have an emotion necessarily. So it's information. Intuition is information, and it's neutral information. It just is. The information that comes through can be something of a warning, perhaps sometimes, or it can be information that will help you understand something better, or it can give you information about your own process and your own self. But it's neutral in general. It comes in. It's almost like it sort of flies in, or it zooms in, and then it goes, it leaves. We can't hold on. We cannot necessarily hold on to an intuitive thought. Sorry, as I'm talking, I'm letting people into the room, so I apologize for that. So we can't really hold on. We can't really hold on to an intuitive thought. It comes in, it drops, it's like it drops, it gives us that information, and then it goes. Whereas the mind and emotions sort of, it keeps us in this kind of loop, looping and looping and looping. Intuition generally is soft in nature, generally speaking, unless it comes in as a warning. And as a warning, intuition can mean I'm walking down a dark alley, or I'm walking down a dark road, and all of a sudden I get this intuitive insight or sense to turn different direction. Don't know why I decided to turn different direction, but I just got this sense out of nowhere. I got to turn a different direction, or I got to take a different road. So usually that's the essence of that intuition comes in sort of quickly. And even then it's kind of soft. It's just, I just have to turn. I don't know why I have to turn, but I have to turn. And you kind of go with it. So intuition in general, it comes in more softly than those sort of harrowing thoughts or feelings or emotions. And it's like a packet of information, and then it goes. And it's up to us what we do with it. So I always tell people how we develop, there's different phases of developing our intuition. So the first phase is learning or understanding how to receive it, is actually receiving it, hearing it, feeling it, seeing it perhaps. How do we receive it? So it's one is receiving it and either feeling that come in, so recognizing that intuition. The other phase, the next phase after recognizing it is once we recognize it, then it's trusting it, right? That's, I want to say, bigger or sort of a little bit more challenging for people than hearing it or receiving it. Many of us, like I mentioned before, have all these experiences where I should have, I knew it, all of those experiences. So receiving it, we can kind of receive it. It's learning how to trust it. Is this the actual intuition? Are my emotions? Where is this really coming from? What does it really mean? Does it really mean? So this is where I believe most of us sort of get stuck, is really learning how to trust it, accept it. The next piece is, what do we do with it if we do anything? And taking action is deciding, making the decision to take action. Now, even if we get our intuitive information, does not mean we have to take action. We have the right, we have the choice, we have the ability to receive that information and not do anything with it. And that is absolutely, totally, completely okay. Just because we have intuition does not mean we have to act on it. Our intuition can come bring us information from the past, right? And the past is done. Perhaps those people or situations from the past are over, and there's not really much we can do with that. But we're receiving that, it's sort of intuitive knowing that we sort of had an inkling about before, and now it's just confirmation. So sometimes it comes in as confirmation. Sometimes it is about something in the future or something in the present. And again, we can keep that to ourselves. or not, or we can see how it can inform or shift or change our behaviors. Maybe it's a soft next step that we do. Maybe we ask questions. Maybe we approach someone. Maybe we change our plans or decisions, and maybe we don't. So I want to say more important than what we do with it is receiving it and learning to trust it, even if we don't do anything with it, and reflecting back on it. So the more we can reflect back on it, the more self-validation we can give ourselves. As we give more and more validation to ourselves, the intuitive muscle will start to grow and develop. So, for example, intuition is coming in all the time. That's the other thing. It's always coming in for each and every single one of us. The intuition information does not stop. The difference is that our minds tend to be so busy and occupied with our thoughts and our thought processes, past, present, future, with our emotions, with all of what's going on, with the busyness of the day, with our life, that when the intuition does come in, we don't see it, we don't notice it, we don't recognize it because it's so busy. So it's always happening, except that there's not much space for us to really recognize it. So it's always coming in. I lost my train of thought, actually. I wanted to go back to, I completely lost the train of thought about the intuition. Yeah, we get in the point of the validation. That's what I wanted to say. So always coming in. Sometimes we recognize it, sometimes we don't. But sometimes it's more important to recognize it, to pause for a minute and say, and acknowledge, right? Acknowledge that this is information coming in for me, and just being with it, just allow it space, just give it space. And then as we go forward and we can start to see, I remember I thought about that, or I felt that, or I knew that may have happened. And it's not about what tends to happen is that people start to beat themselves up about it. It's like, I knew I should have done it. I knew I should have said that. I knew it. I'm stupid, or I'm not have courage, or what's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? And of course, that's not the best approach, because the more we do that, what happens is the less that we leave that space for validation. So validation sort of gets wiped out. It's not even part of our process, the validation. And when we just get stuck on the beating ourselves up about I should have listened. But the thing is that in order for us to understand this intuition, we have to learn, right? How did we learn to walk? When we first were born and we started to walk, what happened? We fell, we fell down. That's what started to happen. So without us falling down, we did not know how to get back up. We did not know how to put the next step in front of the next step, in front of the next foot, in front of the other. We had to fall in order to get back up, in order to learn how to walk without falling. So it's similar here. Our intuition comes in, we start to see it, or we start to recognize it, but we don't trust it, or we don't follow it, or we don't take action. It's okay. Let's just recognize that, there was my intuition, and press the button of validation, self-validation, versus pressing the button of kind of beating ourselves up about it. Because beating ourselves up about it is not going to help us develop it. What's going to happen is it's going to become sort of a negative experience for us versus a positive one. And we're going to start to slowly disconnect from it and push it away a little bit. Because, I knew that every time, but I don't, or I should have. It starts to become negative energy. And what happens is we start to disconnect slowly from that negative energy. And this validation piece just gets lost. It's not even part of our process. So I do invite you, the next time that you start to feel something, think something, and then eventually it starts to happen, or you see it happen, or you see that somewhere it gets validated, imagine you just have a button, if you're visual, and press that button of validation. Just pause for a minute. You might go into, I should have, what's wrong with me, I'm silly, whatever, fine. But then see if you can shift yourself and say, wait a minute, no, That was my intuition at work. That was my intuition coming through. Just take a moment to pause, reflect, acknowledge, and validate. And I want to say that one of the strongest ways to develop is through validation. The more and more and more that you self-validate, the more that intuitive muscle is going to grow and grow and grow, and the more space within gets created for that intuition to drop in. So you basically what you're doing is you're developing a relationship to your intuition, to your intuitive part of you. It is about developing that relationship. As like with everything, we want to develop a relationship, a connection to this intuition, to the intuitive flow. Now, we're not really going to develop that in the relationship or a good relationship if we're constantly beating ourselves up about not following it. To this day, I've been on this journey since 2009. I've been in the field of intuition, clairvoyance, psychic development, psychic work, all of that since, trying to get my numbers properly, 2012. And I've been doing it professionally since 2016. So, and to this day, I can tell you that I don't always follow my intuition. I don't always follow my intuition. It's part of human behavior, human nature. So many things are going on that I see it, I recognize it, but I don't always take action on it or follow it. And I'm okay with that because I understand that it's absolutely normal. It's what's going to happen because we're having this human experience. If we were not in this human body, if we were not in this physical body, we would be 100% connected and merged into our intuitive self. And there wouldn't be all the other stuff that we have with our human self, all the distractions, the mind, the emotions, all of that. So here we are. I'm just going to go a little on a tangent. We're here on Earth, in this Earth life, having a human experience, but we're also the spiritual being. So it's not about negating the human experience, which will have faults, which will have distractions, which we will fall down. It's part of the human experience. So we're not trying to negate this and only be associated or connected to our intuitive self. We're merging the two. We are a merge of the two. We're a merge of our soul self, which is connected to our intuitive self, and our physical self. So that merge of the two is going to have a mixture of both. The idea is to be able to tap in to that intuitive flow or that into our intuitive self, to be able to access it, at will, to be able to access it when we need it, when it's desired, when we're really in need of it, and be able to bring it into this human experience. And at the same time, it's part of this human experience that we have experiences, that we fall down before we learn how to walk. It is part of the human experience. So I believe it's about having both and merging with it and doing a little bit of creating your own unique dance with your intuitive self. It's not necessarily living in the whole intuitive self or identifying completely in it. If we identify completely in it, we're not really fully here. So it's not about fearing these human experiences or these trials and tribulations or these distractions or these falls. Let's fall. It's okay to fall. Let's get back up and learn from it. And we can use the intuitive information to start to learn from every one of those falls. And sooner than later, we may start to fall less. Maybe we'll start falling altogether. Maybe we'll start to run. There are other experiences to experience. So we don't necessarily want to get stuck on, I have to learn how to do it. I have to trust it all the time. I have to use it all the time. It's there. It's a resource. It's a resource for you. It's a beautiful resource. I would say that my life completely changed when I started to tap in and use more and more of this intuitive energy versus just living life according to my mind, because the mind is programmed with all the conditionings that are not necessarily my own. So as we come into this world, we because we get programmed. We get programmed from our parents, who get programmed from their parents, and so on and so forth. The ancestral line. We get programmed from society, from our culture, from education system, from our external environment. And so if we lean too much here, we start to identify too much with the external programming or external influences, we lose this part of ourselves. So for example, I'm going to try and just give an example of this. There's one big example I want to use, but I might not go there for this. I'm going to try and find a smaller example of this. Okay, for example, everybody in school is learning how to dance. Dance is a big thing, dance class. When we're very young, everybody's learning how to dance. Mom says it's really important, and I'm using a general example, okay? Mom says it's important that I learn how to dance. The teachers are putting it out there. All my friends are starting to dance, but I don't feel like it. I don't feel like dance is my thing. So what happens, generally speaking now, we sort of get pulled into that conditioning and that programming and the mind energy, and we lose a little sight of what our true essence is. And that true essence is connected to the intuitive part of us. They're connected. And as I go more and more and I start to get influenced by all my friends who are dancing, then school that is kind of influencing it or encouraging it, I start to go perhaps on that scale and I lose this. But wait a minute, I actually don't like to dance. I don't want to dance. It's not for me. It's not what helps me in my life. It's not what brings me joy, or I don't feel benefit from it. And when I dance, I don't feel good. So again, I'm very general example here. We can say that as that starts to happen, and if you go back in time, we can pick out so many things like this that are programs that actually pulls us away from our true self, from our authentic self, from our soul self, from our intuitive self. So one of the other things that I tell people in order to develop your intuition stronger and stronger is self-work, doing the work, whatever that means, doing the healing work, doing the work, deprogramming work, deconditioning work, to really understand who you truly are. Who are you? Who am I? Who am I? Just that question alone is super powerful question. Who am I? And I actually invite you all to start asking that question to yourself every single day, multiple times a day for the next few days, and just see what comes. Because who you think you are because of that programming, and who you really are, or who you desire, the person you desire to be, or the life you desire to have, is more connected. And this also can be influenced by external forces. So that's a bit of a gray zone, but who are you? Who am I? Who am I? Who am I? Who am I can help bring up those places and spaces that is the true authentic you. So being able to decipher intuitive information also has a lot to do with you knowing yourself, you healing a lot of the wounds or the traumas or the issues that you carry. Why would that help? Because if I'm carrying a wound of my past, for example, again, I'm going to try and pull a general example. If I'm carrying a wound of my past and I'm carrying emotions because of that wound, most of the time, that's not my stuff. That's the stuff, the emotions, the belief systems, the feelings, the thought processes that I picked up from, let's say, from my parents or our parents. So if I adopted their beliefs and programs, and I'm starting to be sad a lot when it's not really my energy or my emotions, I won't be able to decipher, is that information coming in because I'm feeling sad, or is that information really me? So the more we work on clearing our energy field, or working on our wounding, our traumas, our past experience, so that we can become more authentically who we are, the more we work on clearing our energy field, because we pick up and we hold a lot of stuff in our energy field, a lot of stuff that is just not ours. We pick it up, we're like sort of sponges. many of us, the more we can clear that and clear that and clear that, we're left with who we really are. And that in itself is a journey. But I have to say that the more we know ourselves, for example, I'm feeling depressed, but I really, really strongly feel this feeling is not mine. I am not feeling depressed in my life, but I'm picking up depression energy. It's very important to be able to decipher between those two, because you might receive some information actually that is not the intuition, that's tied and connected to this emotion that's not even yours at all. So again, many different ways that we can learn how to develop our intuition. A few of the ways I'm mentioning, and one very important way is learning who we are, developing the self, understanding the self, healing ourselves, going on that journey, because now you really know, that's not mine. That's not mine. That's not mine. Who does it belong to? And maybe you can just release it that way. Also, the bombardment, I would call it that, of all of the other people's thoughts, emotions, and feelings and energy can cloud our space. So as I mentioned before, our intuition is constantly flowing through, constantly flowing through. However, there's so much busyness that we have, whether it's from past stuff and ruminating over the past, stuck in the past, worry about the future, present stuff, other people's stuff. Added onto that is all the stuff that we collect from the people in our environments. All of that creates sort of a cloud. And that cloud, behind that cloud or above that cloud, is the intuitive information. Now, the cloudier we are, let's call it that, the harder that intuition is that seeps in. So understanding what our energy is, what the other person's energy is, starting to become more aware of how your energies interact in different places, different spaces with different people, learning how to clear, really, truly, properly clear out your energy field, return other people's energy, bring your energy back that you lost is also another very important part of this. So energy work and energy practices, or sometimes I call it energy hygiene. It's so vitally important. I'm going to use another example. So I'm going to use a physical example. So let's say we're out in our day. We go to work, we get up, we get dressed, we go to work. We're sharing our spaces with colleagues. We go for lunch with friends. Maybe we hug a few people. We say hello. We kind of nod arms like this. We walk into a space. Perhaps there's a lot of perfume in that store or shop or space. Maybe they're burning incense. Maybe your friend had some perfume on. You leave the house perfumeless, okay? Zero perfume. You didn't put perfume on. You come back home and you have multiple scents all around you. I'm sure that all of us had this kind of experience where you come home and you smell something on this side and then you smell something on that side, you smell something here, but you know it's not your smell because you didn't spray anything on you. It's not possibly yours. It's the same thing energetically, only energy, we can't really smell it unless we develop our ability to smell it. Generally speaking, people are not aware. They're not aware of all the things that so now we go home, at least I can go home, I can remove my clothes, I can wash my clothes, I can take a shower, and then I smell like me again. So it's the exact same thing with energy. We need energy tools and techniques to be able to de-perfume ourselves of other people's perfume and get our own scent back. It's only when we have our own scent or our own self that we can make and take better decisions for our life. So for example, again, I'm going to use this very basic concrete example or physical example of the perfume. Let's say I don't take a shower, I don't take my clothes off. It may drive me crazy trying to figure out what the scent is. What is the scent and where did it come from? And I don't understand, and I smell it, but I can't smell it. I'm gonna open the doors. I'm gonna open my windows. I gotta air out the space because now I think it's my home that smells all these scents. I don't even think it's me. I think it's my home, and I'm airing out the windows, and I'm starting to expend a lot of energy trying to figure it out and get into it and get in the mind, and maybe I picked it up from here. Maybe the scent means X, Y, Z. The other, I want to say the beautiful thing sarcastically, I'm saying the beautiful thing the mind does sarcastically is decide to make things mean things. So if I have the scent on me, when we're back to the scent, oh, it means this. I smell like a peach, and it means that something bad might happen. Now what's going to happen is the mind is off on another tangent that something bad is going to happen. What can happen? What can go wrong? Maybe it's tomorrow. And I'm so far removed from the original scent, I'm off on some tangent. Now, this may sound like a very funny example, but it's exactly what happens in our mind and in our energy field. And so what's happening energetically is the energy is getting stuck. Number one, the energy is getting bigger. So I'm opening the windows. I'm trying to figure out where the smell is coming from. I'm smelling all different parts of my body, and I can't figure it out. And I'm starting to go crazy. And what's happening is that what you, as that famous saying goes, what you focus on expands, right? So now this energy is expanding. Maybe I needed to come home and cook a healthy dinner or cook any kind of dinner, and I'm not, because I'm so focused here. This getting bigger, it's driving me more crazy. Now I'm airing out the windows. I'm spending so much energy here, and now I'm making it mean something. Now my mind is all the way in a different location. Maybe I'm cooking my food, but I'm thinking about what that scent meant and what I'm making it mean. I am not present. All my energy is getting completely expended. It's getting bigger. This energy is not even mine. It goes back to the perfume. It's not even mine. And all of a sudden it became mine. I made it mean something, and now I'm making it mean something in the future. And now I'm full of fear when it was not mine at all. This is what happens energetically without us consciously being aware of what is going on. Now, when all of that is happening, it is very difficult and hard for that intuition to flow through, for that intuition to come through, for us to be able to see the intuition, because we're so clouded and we're so busy and we're so pulled away. We're not here. We're not our own scent. You know, if I go back to the scent, we're not our own scent. Our own scent is neutral. I know my own scent. I know what I smell like. If somebody comes and says, you smell like, I don't know, you smell like mud. No, I don't smell like mud, because I know that there's no mud on me. I don't smell like mud. I know myself. I know that I'm neutral in this moment. But that's when the intuition can come in, is when we have space, when we're to neutralize to ourself. So becoming neutral, or learning how to become neutral, is also very helpful. But go back to the energy clearing. We need tools and techniques to clear our energy. Just like we come home, we wash our clothes, we take a shower, we clear the scent off us that's not our scent, and we can be us, we can be ourselves. Similarly, we need these energy tools and techniques to clear. The more we clear, the more intuition has that ability to come through, to flow through. So very important. So again, there's many different ways that we can learn how to develop our intuition. Let me just see what else I want to say, and then I can start to open up slowly to questions, and bring as many questions as you want. Well, actually, let's open to questions now. Let's just see if there's any questions, and you can just pop the questions in the chat. You can start popping your questions in the chat if you'd like. So I just want to go back, and I'm gonna continue talking. So I just want to go back to the self-validation. So I want to say how it is so vitally important to start to recognize in a neutral way, no judgment, about when you had an intuitive feeling or thought, and then when you had the ability to have it validated. Maybe it came true, maybe you learned something, and then, oh, that happened. It's important to just start to reflect, and sometimes people like to keep a journal about it. You can start to like type it in your phone notes, but start to see when you had a clear intuition, and then when it sort of came, I don't want to say came true, because it's not a prediction, but when it sort of got validated, just acknowledge yourself. You know, just acknowledge yourself. It is so vitally important, the validation, the self-validation piece. Yeah, so let me just see if there's any questions. Okay, so somebody wrote a question that very intersection, however, still, how can we go to our inner side? So I'm assuming you mean how can we connect more and more to our inner self, our true self? So one, as I mentioned, we have to do the work. I can't encourage that enough. And I'll take my personal self as an example. Before I stepped into the path of healing, I didn't really know myself. Things were happening in my life, and I was sort of at the mercy of what was happening. I allowed myself to really get kind of pulled into different directions. And believe things that were not actually true. I self-created my own sort of suffering by believing my thoughts that were not true. And a lot of that happened because I never learned what my true self was. I never went to school and I never had a course that taught me learn how to develop your authentic self or learn how to connect to your authentic self. I never learned that. Nobody ever taught that to me. So I didn't even know what that meant until I started to get onto the path of healing, self-development, spirituality. Many people have different words for it. And I started to understand that there was more for me to understand and learn about life, about myself, about the influences of my parents. I had no idea. I knew that I came from a lot of struggle and traumatic childhood, but I wasn't aware how much that influenced me until I had my first major sort of heartbreak and things started to crumble and fall apart. And that's when I started to realize, wait a minute, this reminds me of my mom. Wait a minute, this reminds me of the story of my mom and my dad. That's when I started to slowly wake up to, hey, there's a connection here. Then I stepped into the healing path. Then I started to learn about who I am, because I'm not here in this world. We're not here in this world just to carry, sorry, the shit of our ancestors. We didn't come here just to carry those bags for them. We came here to break it, to break that cycle, so we don't carry that forward. And what we can carry forward is more authenticness, more authentic energy. I had no idea who I was authentically. So just going back to your question, I mean, there's many ways we can get back to our inner self or know our inner self, but for me, this is one of the biggest ways, the most important ways that we can do that. Now, a lot of people will say meditation, and then a lot of people will say, oh, but I can't meditate. So I don't want to talk about meditation. It could be meditation, but it's also very important to find space for yourself, whether it's on a weekly basis. If you can't do it daily, most of us cannot do it daily because we're way too busy, but find time and space for yourself to process, whatever that may mean. For people, it's getting and receiving a massage, getting and receiving a Reiki session, going for a walk, going for a jog, going on the treadmill, going for a walk on the beach, sitting in nature. It's very important that you find a way where you get some time to yourself, even if it's just 15 minutes, but you do it on a weekly basis, just space. There's no music playing, there's no podcast playing, there's nobody around you. And I know for some people that may be difficult, but the shower hopefully can be a place where you can get those 10 or 15 minutes by yourself. Sometimes while driving or getting on public transport, even if there's other people around you, you can still be in your inner space. Very important to have some time to self, to process life, process what's happening, feel what you're really truly feeling. Most of us, and myself included, when it gets really busy or life gets really heavy and busy, we don't really know what we're truly feeling when everything is going so fast and we just have to keep on going and moving and doing. We don't really fully know what we're feeling. So it's very important to understand, what do I really feel about this? What do I really want in this? And one of the most important ways to do that is some alone time. Now, some people say, oh, meditate. Yes, you can do it in meditation, sure. And there's multiple ways to meditate. But whatever it is, just some sort of alone time. Being in nature is I don't want to say it's better. There's no good and, no better, no not and better. But nature can also be very helpful. Our environments can help enhance that. So I'll leave that there because I can go on, and I'm going to just continue on with some of the questions. So daily practices to develop the intuitive abilities. Well, I sort of just answered that one in, I really believe in carving out time, because we have to create space in order. So for example, I give this example of the cup. If I bring this full and I want to pour more water into the cup, there is no space. The water that I'm going to start to pour in will fall out of the cup. That water that falls out of the cup, we're not going to know it. It fell out. We got to create space in order to pull in or receive. We got to create space. So I am a very strong believer on creating space, ideally every day. And that's why people say meditation time, but it could be yoga time. You know, people like to do yoga. It could be when you're on the treadmill. It could be when you decide to go for a walk after dinner. It could be when you're washing the dishes. But it's time and space that you have with yourself. Now, in the beginning, it might be very busy, very, very busy, and it's okay. But the trick or the goal is that you do it every day, or you do it every second day, every third day, and you just continue doing it, and you just continue doing it. And sooner than later, as you're washing those dishes, or as you're taking a drive or taking a shower, or whatever the case is, more space will happen if you intentionally set this time for your own space or your own time. So you can do the dishes completely unconsciously. You can do the dishes while watching TV. You can do the dishes while you're on the phone, or you can do the dishes more consciously, or setting an intention that this is my time. Again, it can be dishes, taking a drive, taking a walk, but finding a place and time. It can be even just sitting, listening to a bit of music. I would say more neutral music, where you have time, and set that intention. This is my time to process. You can set an alarm if you're really busy, 15 minutes, but the more you do it, the more your cup will start to empty slowly, and the more you can start to receive. And in those spaces, what happens is that your intuition may not come in that space itself, but you're telling your psyche, you're telling yourself that I'm creating space. And so maybe it's when you're washing the dishes, that's your way of creating that space. And you have a question, or you're really needing to understand something, but it's not when you're washing the dishes that the information comes or the answer comes. It's actually maybe when you're taking a drive or when you're driving to work. All of a sudden it comes. Remember, intuition comes. It comes and it goes. It comes and it goes. It drops in and it leaves. You can't attach yourself to intuition necessarily, and you cannot ruminate over it. It's like a drop. So it may not happen when you're creating that space, but you're creating the space. So now I drank half this cup, and I'm going to put it somewhere on the counter. I don't have to refill it right away, but I have space now that when it's time to refill, there's space for it. So again, it's not necessarily when you want it to come in. That's the other thing. It's not necessarily when you want it to come in. It will come in when there's enough space. So set the goal or intention to start to create more space for yourself. And then as time goes on, you'll start to see that the intuition starts to come in. And because you've created that space, you can kind of recognize it, hear it, see it, feel it. So I'm going to continue to other questions. Okay. Yeah, so I think, Michaela, it's very similar. What would you say it's best practice to increase your intuition? So there's no necessarily best practice. There's many practices. I've outlined and I mentioned a few already about, creating space, self-validation, recognizing when you do have an intuitive thought, maybe writing it down, keeping track of it, doing energy healing practices so that you can come back to yourself energetically. It's also creating space energetically, doing the healing work, because as you do the healing work, you know yourself more and you create more of that space for yourself. So all of these are different ways. Yes, and we can go to classes and courses to develop it. And I will talk about that at the very end, because I do help people do that. So I'll talk about that at the end. Of course, we can do that. There's also books. There's a lot of books out there that will help us develop our intuition. So there's multiple ways. There's no one best way. It's really what way is best for you at the moment, and that might change. I've been through all of them, basically. So you try them, you see how it works, you try other ones. It's what works for you in the moment. You got to really find what works for you, and you really need to find how to carve that space. I can't, again, reiterate it enough. For some people, for me personally, I get a lot of my intuition when I'm driving alone, not when I'm driving with someone. And it could be when the music is on or off. It could come in both times. But when I go for drives, and that started when I was quite young, whenever I used to have problems or issues, I would just go for a drive. And I would drive and drive and drive and drive until I felt better. When I felt better, I would turn around and sort of go back home. So I sort of started to create that unaware. I was unaware of what I was doing, but I sort of created that sort of we could call it a neural pathway of how I'm carving time for myself. So nowadays, I really find that a lot of my intuition comes in when I'm driving. But you got to find where it comes in for you. Some people it's the shower, some people it's on the treadmill, walking. It could be any time. It could be just walking to the mall and it comes in. It comes sometimes when we least expect it to come, hence why it's so important that we have a way to sort of clear our energy, clear our mind, because it's the busyness that doesn't help us, or I don't want to say this, doesn't allow us to see it or hear it. It's the busyness of the mind that prevents us from receiving it. So ways that will help you clear the mind. Now, sitting in meditation is not really one of them. Most people say, oh yeah, I try to meditate, I sit and I can't stop the mind. You're not supposed to stop the mind. The mind will never stop. It's just about creating practices to get little spaces, the space. That's all it's about, creating space. So if you meditate and your mind is super busy, that's totally fine. Continue to meditate, because as you do so, eventually you'll get a little space and a little bit more space and more space. And you're going to train yourself to understand that, hey, I have space, and you're going to invite more of that intuition in, or you're going to be able to recognize it more. Okay, so how can I better distinguish between my intuition and my mind over analyzing the situation? So that's the thing that I mentioned. Our intuition doesn't analyze. The nature and the essence of intuition, it does not do any analysis. So the minute you go into analysis, you know that you're in the mind and you're no longer in your intuitive self. So I don't know so how better can I distinguish between my intuition? Well, I'm not sure, Angela, if I answered your question properly, but the minute you feel that you're analyzing and you're in a loop of analysis, you're not in your intuition at all anymore. So for example, I'll try and I'm going to try and reach for another example. For example, you got some information. Yeah, I'm not able to get a proper example, and I don't want to put something out there that's not proper. But the minute you go into analysis, you're not in your intuitive mind. So just recognize it. All you have to do is recognize. You don't even have to stop it. You can just say, oh, okay, my intuition said maybe, okay, I'll give this example. Intuition says turn left. You're walking down the street. This is a super basic example. You're walking down the street. Your intuition says turn left. Now, your intuition just said turn left. That's it. Now the mind is going to come in and say, why did it tell me to turn left? What would happen if I go straight? Oh my gosh, maybe there's something bad. Maybe somebody's going to murder me. Maybe somebody's going to rob me. Maybe something really bad is going to happen. And the mind can't stop thinking about what would have happened if I would have went straight instead of turning right, or why did I decide to turn right, or all the sort of bad things or negative things. So the spiral starts to happen. That's the difference. Intuition, turn right. Done. Mind, but what's happening if I turn left? What happens if I go straight? What happens if I stop walking? Maybe there's something. That's the analysis, and gets into paralysis, and then also gets into the loop and ruminating. So just, if all you can do is note that, like all you can do is acknowledge that, that's great. All you can do is say, okay, it's my mind. and just start to separate. Just if you can actually get to the place where you're able to separate, you're ahead of the game. So that's a really important step as well. Intuition, turn right, done. Mind, oh my God, and this and that, and this could have happened, and that could have happened to me. Oh my God, what about if that would have happened to me? I would have been dead by now. All of that is actually unnecessary and expended energy, and it can pull you down. I would say pull you down in a rabbit hole, or make you go into some, lower level emotion of, fear or anxiety or all of that. So that's the mind creation. So just your ability to notice that difference is huge. So I would say that's a really big first step. Okay, and then one more question here. What about breathing? Do you recommend any type of breathing? Absolutely. I'm not a breathwork practitioner or facilitator. I've done breathwork before, and absolutely 100%. If you feel that you resonate with breathwork, absolutely, breath work clears and clears and clears energy. That's what breath work is doing. It's clearing the energy. So Reiki clears energy, breath work clears energy, releases, clears, releases, clear. And the more that we do that breath work, the more we clear our energy, the more that intuition can come through. As well, when we're in the breath work process, and if we do it often, even if we don't do it often, we can have insights. So the breath can actually sort of take us into, I don't want to say in another dimension. I don't want to go that far for the purpose of this. And I'm not talking about breath work, but it can sort of bring us in an altered state, and when we're in a bit of an altered state, we can feel more connected to our soul self, our true self, our authentic self, and we can receive more insights. Remember, we don't have to take action on all the insights we receive, because I want to say, receive a lot of insights. Okay. You may not realize it, but we're receiving true insights all the time. So we don't have to necessarily take action on it. Again, that's the mind function. Oh, now I have to do something about it. No, let's just be with that information. Maybe it's just to be with it. That's all it is. And I don't know if you noticed the shift in my voice when I said, let's just be with it. There's just more calm. There's more ease. There's more neutrality. And that's the nature of intuition. Yeah, I don't believe, Michaela, I don't believe we're doing replays, but we're coming to the end of this, I don't want to say course, of this little sort of workshop or talk. Is there any questions that you have? Any other questions? Because I can talk a lot about this topic, because there's multiple branches that we can branch into. I didn't even actually get to go into the psychic energy of all of this. So just in brief, basically, we are all psychic. So what does psychic mean? Psychic is just, it's sort of that, it is our intuitive information, but it's that extrasensory information. Psychic is being able to tap into the extra senses to receive the information. That's what a psychic is in basic terms. So for example, let's say I hear a voice that says, turn right. That's me operating through my psychic senses, because I'm receiving extrasensory information. I have extrasensory perception, and yes, we can develop it. As I mentioned, all the other ways that I already mentioned, the other way is development through classes, groups, and training. This is one of the ways I began. I'm from Montreal, Canada, and back home, we have a lot of psychic people, or psychics, and we have a lot of centers that are focused primarily on psychic work, or traditional psychic work, where we sit in circle on a weekly basis, sometimes on a daily basis, and we just go into that energy and we sort of develop it that way. One of the ways we develop it is by using it. Okay, so how do we develop our bicep? We have to use the bicep. We go to the gym, we work it out, we grow it, we develop it. It's the exact same thing with the psychic energy and the intuition. We need to use it. We need to develop it, we need to use it in order to develop it. So there are many classes, many courses, many trainings where if you're very interested, to go into sitting with others and learning different techniques. So there's a lot of different techniques that we can learn. different schools of thoughts, different philosophies, sort of different cultures also. And we can learn these tools and techniques to help us develop a little faster than the other ways. The other ways are perfectly fine, but anytime we want to learn something, we can take that step and go to a class or take a course or whatever the case is. So one of the biggest ways that I sort of made a jump in my intuitive abilities or trusting my intuition is by developing my clairvoyance, which is the ability to see, to have the extrasensory perception of sight. So I can see what's maybe not there. And I don't mean that whole see ghosts kind of thing. It's the way we receive the information. We have four main ways. So we can feel things that are about to happen or happened or in our present moment. We can hear things like a voice says turn right. We can just know things. All of a sudden, we just know that the person is lying. We just know. We don't know how we know, we just know. And we can get visions, whether it's our day visions, whether we close our eyes in meditation and receive visions, whether it's in our dreams, we can get visions. So one of the ways that I developed is going to a training. It was clairvoyance. So we focused on developing our inner vision or our third eye to be able to see the information. And that's really how I started to develop, because I developed that ability and then I developed the ability to give people readings. So I would go into a space, go into my third eye energy, tap into someone else's energy and be able to tell them things about themselves and about their life. Not necessarily predictions, but I would look at their potential energy and be able to speak to them that way. And it would all come through the third eye. Now, the more I did that, and it was a training, and I do offer this training, and I'll talk about it in a minute. The more I did that, the more I got validated. The more I did it, the more I got validated. The more I did it, and as I mentioned before, validation grows that muscle. So the more I did readings, it put me into this sort of psychic space or spiritual space or divine space. And the more I sat in that space, which is the third eye space, the more I sat in neutrality, the more I came out of my mind. So I practiced. My ultimate meditation was giving readings, because every time I'm giving a reading, I'm not in my mind. So I developed the familiarity of being not in my mind. I developed the familiarity of being in my third eye. I developed the familiarity of being connected into that spiritual energy. And so when I was not doing readings, I would start to receive information for myself. I don't want to say more easily, but perhaps more, I was able to see it, recognize it, and hear it much more. It was starting to flow more because I recognized the space it was coming from. That was one of the biggest things that the training did for me, or developing it through training. Also, there are so many different energy techniques that we can work with, that we can use, that can sort of fast track that process of developing this resource. I want to say it's a beautiful resource, and I want to say it's a necessary resource to make us more whole, and to make our life more fulfilled, to feel more confident, to have more trust in ourselves, and also to have more trust in life. So there's a lot of benefits in developing our intuition or developing that resource. It's part of us. It's there for us to use. We might as well start to use it. And if we can, and if we're very interested, or if we're feeling the call, let's find a way to help us fast track that. And that's where I say, enroll in a class, a course, a training. Now here at Illuminations, I teach clairvoyant, intuitive development and clairvoyant training. It's a 4-day process where we set the foundation we really go into the foundation of energy, as I was talking about what our energy is, what other people's energy is. We start to learn more about our true energy, how to see it, feel it, decipher it, how to separate ourselves from other people's energy. We learn these beautiful and very powerful, these tools are super simple, but super powerful techniques to clear our energy field. I want to say immediately, clear our energy field, clear our energy fields, clear other people's energy out of our field. And then we learn how to go into the third eye, use the third eye, which is the seat of clairvoyance, and has started to tap into our own energy. So we learn how to give ourselves intentional readings. So if something's going on in our life and we want to receive our intuitive information, we have a process and a technique to be able to do that for ourselves. And then we start to learn how to do it for someone else. Now, I don't teach the class to create psychics. I teach the class to help people develop their intuition, to help people develop their self-trust, to help people develop their self-confidence. And in that whole entire process, we do transform our life. Because, again, from personal experience, the course I teach is a course I took many years ago. And when I started to learn how to develop my intuition properly and ground myself properly, connect to source properly, and clear my energy field properly, living my life with intuition versus living my life without intuition is completely black and white, completely different. And so it did change my life because it helped me not buy into all of the thoughts of my mind. It helped me stop making those stories that most of the times were not true. It helped me tame my emotions. It helped me understand other people, not just myself, but it helped me understand other people. So for example, very quick one, if someone, I'm going to go back to the example of the friend didn't call back. Prior to developing my intuition, my friend didn't call back. She's horrible. She's bad. She doesn't love me. I'm not lovable, etc., etc., etc. Post that, I'm able to understand the other person, to see from the other person's perspective, to understand that maybe they had no capability of calling me. Again, it's a very general example, but you can apply it to other places. Maybe she didn't have the capability of calling me back in that moment or being there for me. So it helped me understand other people, helped me understand the human experience or the human condition on a deeper level. And it started to dissolve a lot of my suffering that I would go into because my mind would take me there. So there's many ways that it changed my life, but this is one of the biggest ways it changed my life because I was really able to not so much go into those stories of the mind and really start to tap into the truth of what is happening versus what I think is happening. And what I think is happening, as I mentioned, comes from our programming and our traumas and our child and all of that. It's influenced by all of that. It's not necessarily the truth. So that alone completely shifted and changed my life. So there's a lot of gems and gifts in learning how to, or actually taking it a step further and intentionally developing the intuition. These are just some of them. So yes, I am teaching a course. It is a 4-day training. It is a very, very structured training. I didn't create this course. It was created in the 1970s. So it's a very beautiful course in the fact that I call it plug and play. You learn some of these processes and these techniques and these tools. And by the end of day 4, you're able to give yourself readings. You're able to give other people's readings accurately. And the transformation, and I don't want to say this, I say this in all humbleness, but I've been teaching this class since 2018, and the transformation that I see people go through from day 1, hour 1, day 1, to the end of day 4 is incredible in just 4 days. And that is because of all the techniques and processes that we do, and also because it's natural. It's our natural ability, it's our natural resource. We just have to learn how to tap into it and have a guide to guide us there and also encourage us. And then the other piece is the validation. The validation is a very big one. So we have all these practices in the class, and that's why there's a big transformation between day 1 and day 4 in just 4 days. And then you're able to take that out into your life. A lot of the tools and techniques are applicable to your daily life, daily situations, work situations, relationship situations. It's not just what you learn. It's sort of like in a box and you take it out also into your life. So I think that's it for tonight. I've talked exactly 1 hour and 5 minutes straight. Thank you everybody for being here and for listening. I can talk more, but if you are interested, I am teaching the course. I believe someone will send you some information tomorrow, just so you can have some information. If you have more questions, you can always connect with me at Illuminations. You can just call the center and ask to connect with me, and they'll connect you to me. And yes, just keep on going, keep on practicing, keep on validating yourself, and most importantly, keep on making and creating spaces for yourself. This is the one thing you can take away. I really encourage you to create these spaces for yourself. It will help you a lot. Yes, the course is online at illuminations.com. You can find it under trainings, and you can go to the tab of clairvoyance. It's also there. You can find it there. Thank you, everybody. I can't see you. I don't know your faces, but thank you anyway. It was a pleasure talking to my computer, but I know you guys were behind there listening. So yeah, thanks. Yeah, maybe if you guys want to just turn on your cameras, and you don't have to, but thank you, everybody. And I don't think I've ever met any of you. So it's nice to meet you all for the first time as well. So thank you, guys. Bye.